Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, All Things Psychology. Today we're going to be talking about Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow is a theorist that I have found beneficial in utilizing in a therapeutic setting, as well as have found his theory on personality development to be quite useful also just in one's own self development. So as always, when I introduce a theorist, I believe it's important to understand their family of origin. This gives you a kind of like a clarity or perspective on our background on how they came about developing their theory on personality. And something that I've noticed with the theorists, they all seem to have come from troubling backgrounds. And so this is the case as well with Maslow. During his childhood and adolescence, he felt very isolated and unhappy. Felt like his father was not present when he was present, if that makes sense. And then his father was literally not present at times. And then with his mom, he felt like she was unaffectionate and punitive. So this was not, as I guess one would say, not the healthiest home environment. And so I believe that this played a big role, as with all of the other theorists, in his development of personality, or his theory on personality development. And so Maslow's theory on personality development has to do with the hierarchy of needs. I'm not sure if you are familiar with them or not. They are very popular and talked about a lot in the psychology counseling setting, and perhaps maybe in the medical field, and perhaps maybe in education. I'm not sure, but he theorized that we have a hierarchy of needs that build upon the other, and they are in order of our most survival needs, like what we need to survive. As far as just on a biological level, right? Like to stay alive, and then what we need to be a whole person. And so I'm going to spend some time on this slide just breaking down his concept. So the lowest level, or the most basic need that we have, is, are, like I was sharing before, like the biological need, which would be like food, right? Water, shelter, air, clothing. These are some things that would be considered like our most basic needs. And according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when one is not able to obtain these needs, it can create unbalance and in one's life, which could cause mental illness, our distress, our mental health distress, our emotional distress. I think that it's important when you are talking about Maslow's theory, as with all other theorists, is to always take culture considerations into factor. And when you think about historical reasons why predominantly Black, Brown, Indigenous, and persons of color tend to have lower social and economic status, are so often in their neighborhoods are food deserts, you can think about how this plays out in one's psyche, right? And being able to actually obtain this higher level of obtaining this higher level of needs that reach to like this holistic well-being person, and how that can affect that. Not even to mention healthcare, quality of schools, like all of these things can play a role. And so you can see how the racial disparities play a part, significant part in our wellness, right? Um, and so after those basic biological needs, the next one would be safety needs, um, a job, to have a source of income, health, property, resources. Again, if you can tell, if you notice, like these first two are predominantly chronically affected in the Black and brown community. Due to historical racial injustices and inequities. And so you can see how, when sociologists and philosophers and researchers say, like, it's so often a child of Black or brown color is like significantly behind starting the race, right? Because of these hindrances are that have been placed on them at no fault to them. And so what tends to happen when these needs aren't met, then to protect oneself from going insane, right? Like you can create these boundaries of self, these protective barriers of self that may be like, you may develop a personality that's really hard, right? And not trusting and yeah, agitated, right? Like when these would not be qualities that would originally be in the person if it wasn't for their circumstances, if it wasn't for their environment. So it does play a significant role in one's psyche and one's wellness. And so the next one will be love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. I'm not sure if you're seeing a pattern here with what I have been talking about the racial disparities, right, and the culture considerations and how that can significantly impact one's mental wellness, our holistic wellness. And so now, according to Maslow, it's not like if the first one is met, then you move to the next one, et cetera, et cetera. Like they could all be a burden on one person at one time. And what I mean by that is one person can be fully aware of desiring these needs, like are wanting these needs, right? These hierarchy of needs all at the same time, and can feel that pressure on them, our emotional distress on them. One could have love and belonging, right? Like could have a family that and friendship, but still struggle with the latter two that we were just mentioning, the safety needs and what I'm calling the biological needs or physiological needs. One could have love and belonging, but still struggle with the latter two. And so it's not like this hierarchy that's linear. Like it could be all at one time. You could have one but still struggle with the other, which is a conversation that you can actually go a little bit more in depth with, right? I posed the question, like, so does that mean one could have self-actualization but still not have access to proper health care or stable income? Of course, as far as the biological needs, they have access to air and water, but maybe the shelter is not up to par, or the food is not consistent. Like, I don't know, I posed that question, something for you to reflect on and think about, seeing that this is not linear. It's fluid and interchangeable. Okay, so after love and belonging, the next level on his hierarchy of needs are esteem, which is like self-esteem. And, and some of these, again, like this would be a great lecture to have in front of a classroom setting with students to kind of hear your feedback and your thoughts on this, because like, what is status and recognition, right? Like who defines that, and what does that look like for esteem, right? is that needed to be esteemed in oneself? Some other ones from his theory are strength and freedom. And I can't remember if I said respect or not. And then the highest one on his hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. And this is like the desire to become the most that one can be. This is like this level of, if one were to use some of the religion philosophies out there, like nirvana, when you reach the Buddha stage, right? Like in Christianity, you have become like Jesus the Christ. So like this is like where you are fully aware of yourself, right? And you are living in order, balance, and harmony with that. Okay, so these are his hierarchy of needs. And according to Maslow's theory, which I have actually found as well in the counseling profession, that so often one's mental distress can actually fall into one of these categories. Because again, you have to think about perception as well. So one could actually have, let's say, safety needs, let's just use that one, and they have a stable income and a good job and they're healthy, but in their perception, they do not. So also keeping that into consideration, that it's not always about literal, it could be someone's perception or perspective on it. But I have found that so often when working with people, that their mental distress could actually fall into one of these categories. Now, he considered these innate needs, like instinctual needs, that, and what he means by that is it's like you're born with the automatic desire to obtain these needs in one's life. Like that is the journey that you set out on from the time that you are of age to, like, I guess that would be considered like maybe childhood, right? Like maybe 7 or 8 years of age, like, or maybe, preschool. Well, actually, no, I take that back. You will actually see that from infancy, right? Because like a baby cries for what? To get fed. And so, he believes that these are like innate needs that one desires throughout the course of their life. So with these innate needs, the cognitive part, like he felt like the innate need to know and to understand. There is this mindset need to appear. Second set of innate needs. I don't know why I put second set of innate needs. So excuse that. Appear late in infancy and early childhood. And so kind of like what we were talking about, how these innate needs from the slide that I showed you previously, how it just, he believes that at some point it just naturally goes into motion in one's life. And an example of that would be like the natural curiosity of a child that you begin to see really, from a baby age. And that everyone is on this path, like our desires to be on the path to obtain like self-actualization of self. So characteristics of self-actualizers would be someone who's fully aware of themselves, radically accepts self, unconditionally loves self, unconditional and radical freedom towards self, non-judgment, kindness, openness, and a growth mindset. So some reasons for failure to obtain self-actualization would be trauma, mental illness, denial of true self, and a fixed mindset. And what I mean by denial of true self, like again, when we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we were talking about like the basic needs, right, for survival, which is the food and the shelter and stable income, when and you know, you can actually go to the next one with the love and belonging as well, and esteem. But so often when one is unable to obtain what they feel they need in order to thrive, to protect themselves from not going insane, they deny that this is happening and can like create this facade, or we wear the mask, right? Like what we talked about with Jung. And that's what I mean by denial of true self. Like, in order to protect myself, I have to deny what the reality that is really in front of me, so that I can survive. But sometimes when one is just trying to survive, one is not moving to the next level to thrive, which is to move beyond that. So that's what I mean by denial of true self. So these are some reasons for failure to actually attain the self-actualization, which again, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is the ultimate desire, or one's innate desire to obtain. So that was a shorter presentation than some of my past ones. I've decided to kind of cut out some of the information that I was providing before and just stick to pretty much just sharing with you what the theory is, and some of my thoughts on the theory, and how that theory plays out in one's personality development. So your reflections on the theory: do you like it? Do you dislike it? What are some things you can take from it? Are you already familiar with it? And do you feel like it has been useful as far as in your own quest of self-discovery and development? Remembering when you are always reflecting on a theorist to consider multicultural factors, and how that plays a role in the theory, and what I mean by how that plays a role, how there could be some alternatives or modifications that would be needed when you think about working with this theory with culture diverse population. So I hope that this was informative for you. And thank you again for your attention.